Well, welcome to another episode of the YA Podcast. I'm Ryan Keaton, joined as always by Lorenzo Baylor, and today we have special guest Lewis McMullen. Lewis, thanks for joining us.
Glad to be here.
Tell our listeners a little bit about yourself, your role here at the TBMB.
I am the church planting specialist for Tennessee Baptist, and so I work with Anglo and African American church planting across our state. Mm-hmm. And then another part of my role here is I do a lot of the demographic, psychographic analysis of communities for our other teams. And so I kind of do a dual role, and I've been with TBMB in August will be 10 years.
That's
10
awesome.
years.
10 years.
Yeah.
Well, just got kind of as we get started off of that, how have you seen maybe Tennessee or church planting change in the last 10 years?
Well, when I first came on board with Tennessee, we saw a lot of church plants being done in our major cities, Chattanooga, Knoxville, Nashville, Memphis. Over the years, we've seen a shift more to rural and outside suburban. We've had more rural church plants probably in the last 5 years than we've had in a long time here in the state. And part of that, I think, is post-COVID. A lot of people are being able to work remotely. They're buying outside of the cities, the towns, and everything. Matter of fact, one of the fastest growing areas right now outside of Murfreesboro, which has always been a fast growing area, but Putnam County, Cookeville. The surrounding area is growing by at least 7 to 8% the last few years. People are moving in of very rural areas, but they're Californias, Illinois, Florida. Some people from there moving into the area. And so we're looking to try to start new churches in those communities that are more of a community-based church than just a city, people driving in type church.
Are you seeing like age of pastors planting? Are you seeing like a pattern to that, or is it just kind of everywhere? Or?
The average age of pastors planting in our state is the average age of our state, which is about 34 right now. Yeah.
So young adults kind of planting churches.
Young adults. Second ministry option. Mm-hmm. They've either served as a pastor or on staff somewhere, got the heart to reach out to people, and they've decided to go and plant and make that second ministry option. Yeah. On the other end, we've got a number of guys who have retired from ministry who are now planting, but they're taking a Timothy with them, a younger guy, and working out a succession plan where they'll hand it over to the younger guy, which is it's a new phenomenon with church planting I'm seeing here in the state.
That's cool. Oh. That's cool. Do most of our church plants come out of a local church, like birthing a new church, or are they like, their own kind of autonomous, or both?
The last 10 years, we've seen the shift to coming out of churches. And I think part of that was a strategy shift that we did here, TBMB. When I first went into church planting, it was sending churches. Then in the 80s and 90s, it was planters filling a call, church sending them out, but not really being supportive as far as we're giving you families, giving you people to be a part of it. So what happens is we had a very planter-centric model where, conventions were doing what the mother church should do and everything. Yeah. But over the last few years, it's more churches being more involved, churches helping the planter, raising up planters. I'll give you a good statistic. We just looked at this on our team. When I came 10 years ago, 1.5% of our churches were involved in church planting. We're now up to 9% of our churches involved in church planting.
That's awesome.
By 2024, I was hoping it'd be 10, but I'll take 9.
That's right.
I'll take 9.
That's awesome.
What has it been like? Obviously, uh, we've kind of gone through a lot of change in our world as a side. Like, what did it look like, even going through like a pandemic in church planting? Did that slow it down, or did it ramp it up? How did
We
that work out?
actually planted more churches in the pandemic than any other southern state. We had actually 14 actual church plants
Wow.
happen during the pandemic.
Wow.
I can't explain it.
Yeah. Were they meeting in person?
They some of them were, some of
Okay.
them went to Zoom.
Yeah.
Some of them were working to get started before that.
Yeah.
And I think during the pandemic, what I think helped those church plants was people were looking for answers.
Exactly. Yeah.
And so they were plugging in
Yeah.
with these plants. So we were very excited about it, and we were very surprised about it because we figured that the pandemic year would be just flat,
Yeah.
and it wasn't.
Wow.
How do you see like a partnership with the local church impacting like a church plant sustainability, or do you see it be better or healthier, or is there any correlation there?
With a mother church is healthier. You've got the relationships, you've got the support, you have someone who can give them resources, help guide with them. They're investing. And we use term mother church because it's just like raising a child. And if the whole church is behind it, there's just kind of a boost for that planter and his family. So there's some guidelines built in to help support that. I'm ashamed to say that used to, when we had mother churches, what it was, they just signed a piece of paperwork and gave them funding. But we've done a lot in investing in churches, showing them how to raise a healthy, self-sustaining, self-supporting, self-leading congregation, working with a church planter to do that.
Yeah, that's awesome. When you do these demographic studies, you go around, what are some, like, is there like a key, like part of that churches are wanting, or is there something that churches are looking for? Is it like age or life stage, or what are churches looking for? And then maybe what should churches look for in those things?
Most churches are looking for, I hate to say it, they're looking at how many families we have around.
Sure.
Everyone seems to be focused on how many families and what type of families. Looking for average age. And that's where you kind of sit down with the church. Here's the average age of your community. Here's the average age of your church. How can you make this work? What do you need for leadership? I get a lot of them. Hey, how many households are around here with children? How do we do children's ministry, family ministry? Couple of things I think you need to look for, though, is when you start looking at demographics, yes, look at average age, look at who's moving in as far as type of what we call mosaic groups. Mosaics are lifestyle groups that have different buying trends, different lifestyle trends, and everything. Mosaics are it's designed as a consumer buying mosaic or lifestyle, but we've been able to adapt that to a church ministry lifestyle. And you need to look at the people around you to see, does our ministry fit those larger lifestyle groups? Can we work together? And if not, do we start a new ministry towards that, or do we start a new church towards that? Do we go in and try to overhaul everything we have, which sometimes is it just destroys a church? Or do we create things to reach that certain mosaic group, that lifestyle group coming in to the area? I try to tell them you need to look at that. You need to look at those factors. And here's something that a lot of churches will look at. They'll read, oh, they're millennial, they're Gen X, those type of things. I try to convince churches, millennial, Gen X, boomers, Z, whatever group there are, look different in every part of the state of Tennessee.
Yeah.
So you've got to take your context. You just can't take the whole information of paperwork and take your context. The hardest thing I have when I do demographics and analysis for communities is to try to tell the church, okay, this is what's on paper. Now you need to get out in your community with some shoe leather and see how it coincides with the people you're trying to reach.
Wow.
So that's the hardest struggle. They just want to take the paper and not look at the things that are happening. There is one trend over the last 4 years that I've seen in the state of Tennessee that a lot of churches are not gearing up or reaching, and that's single adult ministry.
Yeah.
We are seeing almost every community across Tennessee. Every time I do
Senior adult?
single,
Okay.
single,
Like
you
single
know,
people,
single
unmarried.
people, unmarried,
Yeah.
unmarried with children,
Okay.
where we are seeing an uptick throughout the whole state. And it's not only single moms, it's single dads.
Yeah.
And when I've done community analysis, I did a community just a couple of months ago, south of here. 47% of the households around them were single parents
Wow.
in a 1 mile radius, but they did not have a single ministry of aspect for their church.
Mm-hmm.
And like I said, we're seeing that trend across the state, which means, as more and more people are moving in, we're seeing more and more even single adults move in.
Yeah.
How do you encourage, especially new church planners who may not have a lot of volunteers or a lot of resources, provide things for single parents?
Partner with a community organization, community outreach, something that they can partner with and build those relationships with those people and connect to them, like through a school, through some type of organization in the community, and just find somebody who has the resources and be a partner with them.
Could be some people listening who are like, we believe in church planting is great, but our church could never do that. What are some encouragement you would give to any size church in planting a church? But then maybe also after that, what are some characteristics that your church, good church plants, these characteristics make up churches who usually church plant?
Okay. Every church can plant a church. You might say, well, a lot of churches look at it, well, we financially can't do it. You can pray. You can help support a planter by walking alongside of him. You can send families to do mission things. I'll give you a good example. I had a new church plant that started in the Clinton area when I first came on board. And they had just a few people in their core group. They found a church that was primarily senior adults. And that senior adult church every Sunday sent 5 to 6 older women to this new plant. They either took care of babies or prayed during the service.
Wow.
That was their work. Every church can be involved. It's not only financial. So if you say, well, we want to be part of a church plant, find whatever you can offer and be a part of it. We do a thing called coalitions, where we have multiple churches involved in church planting across our state, where they're joining together, bringing multiple resources to it, and then being able to say, okay, we can't give a lot of money, but we can give families, or we can give space in our building for them to meet, or we'll babysit the planter's family, or whatever, those type of things. The churches that I see that want to plant churches are churches that look beyond themselves. They have a passion to reach people, and they have an understanding knowing that's a people group or that's a community that we can't reach, but it's okay if we help somebody else reach it. We know that they're not going to come sit in our pew, but we rather reach them for the kingdom. So it's that passion, there's that understanding, and just a servant's heart. Hey, we'll serve, we'll help, whatever we can. What's ours is yours, and share with that.
What are some characteristics that you see in churches that plant other churches? Like, if I was a pastor or a church leader and I want my church to plant, but these are just kind of the DNA that I would need to try to foster in my church before we would be healthy enough to plant another church.
Priority of missions, a great faith that they're risk takers, strong leadership that has the trust and the credibility with the congregation. And then I think the other thing that really works with this is you've got strong champions in the congregation that really want to be a part of reaching and missions and everything. Every church that I've seen that's part of church planting has those things. And you also, this is going to sound strange, a pastor and a leader who's secure in their leadership.
Mm-hmm.
One of the things I've heard over 35 years of church planting, well, we don't want to be a part of church planting because some of our people might leave, or you might steal some of our people. The pastors I've seen who are part of it give their people away.
Yeah.
They're willing to do that.
Yeah, because churches can, not to be crass, but can become like the Dead Sea, right? They constantly take, but there's no outlet.
There's no outlet,
and so there's no life. They're not reproducing life in other areas, and so they just become stagnant.
Yeah.
Have you seen do you have any examples of like churches who they put that yes on the table and their church became more healthy because of that?
I knew you were going to ask that question.
It doesn't have to be specific, but I would say that would have to be a
every
force.
church I've seen involved in church planting in our state, they've had some kind of uptick in their health.
Yeah.
First Baptist Brownsville, part of Blue Oval, they got a vision that they're going to be a training center. They're going to be a part of Blue Oval. They're going to be supportive of Blue Oval. And they had just gotten a new pastor. And that church is so excited now, and they're growing and they're vibrant, and their people are excited not only about Blue Oval, about other things in the community.
Yeah.
So they got a vision of seeing that community, and not only seeing Blue Oval, but now seeing Brownsville and being a part of it and being excited about it. I've got a church plant down in Memphis right now, Risen Savior, and they were struggling in a community that, space and everything like that. And their planter pastor went to him and said, we're going to help train other church planters, even though we're struggling. And all of a sudden, he is starting to see people who are coming to be part of his congregation because they have an outward vision. It's just not only their community, and they are growing healthy. They were given a piece of property, and now they're trying to raise money to build a building on it. But they've got people who now are going out in the community and sharing the gospel and everything just because they made a commitment. We're going to train other church planters. We're in the middle of this journey by ourselves, but we're going to train other church planters to be a part of it too.
Wow,
that's amazing.
So all three of us served together on the Future Framing team a couple of years ago. What were some things from the Future Framing team as far as looking ahead down the road that just really jumped out to you, that maybe shocked you, that you're maybe even still wrestling with when it comes to church planting?
I think the biggest piece was when we saw that we were heading down the road to where Christianity would no longer even be a majority in the U.S. and the low percentage of that. And for me, for church planting, that means the culture is changing such that we no longer can ask the same questions and have the same expectation. We're dealing with a culture that has no Christian idea to it. So starting a new church is we almost would have to say, not even use term church because these people, church is just not on their radar.
Yeah.
I think that jumped out at me. The impact with families jumped out, and just seeing those shifts. I think one of the other things that you guys, as we saw this, the impact of technology
Yeah.
that is jumping out, moving us along, AI, those other things. I think especially in church planting, but in church, we've got to come up with a way of using the technology that assists in fulfilling the mission of God, but not doing the mission of God,
Sure.
just depending on the technology by itself.
Yeah.
Yeah, and all of those things. I mean, my brother-in-law was a church planner in Colorado, and I served out there with him for a little bit over a summer, and I just remember he kept like kind of his motto was like, you need to be comfortable being uncomfortable in church planting, just because you have to have conversations with people intentionally, and part of that may even be technology. You may be super uncomfortable with engaging people online for the first time, but it's one of the ways, right? It's one of the ways that you can market, you can promote, you can connect.
Online is the front door of the church now.
Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah.
And, I tell planters, your online presence and in a way, your social media presence is your front door. And people are, people are becoming more and more adept at that. And I think COVID was possibly part of that. I talked about the mosaic groups. One of the trends I've seen among all the mosaics is one of the things that they describe is how they do with online technology, how they do with media. Everyone jumped to a different level after COVID. And as our communities become more and more technological, our church plants have got to up their game. And I tell some church planters that, I have some guys that tell me, well, I'm not that great at technology or social media.
Yeah.
Then get a 14-year-old kid in there and let them go to town because, again, it's the front door.
Yeah. How have you navigated a big part of a church plant? I've seen for example, my family's church back home in St. Louis, go Cardinals, grow from the time I was a child all the way up to now. I think they have about probably 1,200 members or so, but it was 50 when I was 4 and 5 years old. It was maybe 50 or 100 people, and they've grown. But part of that was really engaging with their local community. How important is there an emphasis on church planting and engaging with the local community around them in terms of just ministry and outreach?
Ministry, outreach, and presence. The statistic is still true. 97% of people come to church based on an invitation or a relationship. It takes seven relationships for a person to stay at a church or a plant.
7 encounters with someone?
No, 7 relationships with someone in that church or in that.
So this family,
you got to connect.
I connect with that family and that family.
And so the problem with technology will keep you at a distance so you can just communicate. What I tell planters is develop a plan where you start with the technology, but you end up with the personal touch, a personal relationship and everything like that. And I think COVID proved that also because one of the big things that was going on, and especially in church planting world when I was during COVID, was everybody started talking about digital church. digital church, online church, digital church. And people got tired of it.
Mm-hmm.
I still think in our communities, in our society, people still want that personal touch.
Yeah.
But they're more selective.
Mm-hmm.
And so planters have to get out and build those relationships. Families have to get out there and build those relationships, which means we're almost going to the old school. We need the front porch or the stoop, where people are connecting with the community. And I think technology is that first part of that. But how do we get to the front porch? How do we get to the stoop?
Yeah.
How do we get hanging on the street corner?
Yeah.
With people and connecting with them.
Yeah. Love that. That's amazing.
So we're seeing across the state just the ministry pipeline being pretty dry right now. I think the statistic was anytime 12 to 15% of our Tennessee Baptist churches are without a senior pastor. Are you seeing that impact church planting as well? Like, we need churches in this area. There's just no one to do it.
We have a dry pipeline. Especially ethnic, African American, and then in Anglo, we just don't have a lot of people in saying, "Hey, I want to come plant, or I want to learn, I want to grow, and to plant." So we're having to rebuild that, revise that, and everything. I've got over 200 places where we needed new churches yesterday.
Wow. So if there was a young adult or a college leader or pastor who was listening to this, how would you encourage them to raise up those in their groups that were interested in church planting to see, hey, Tennessee might be a mission field? Yes, go overseas with IMB or something like that, but you could also do that right here in your backyard. Mm-hmm. What are some ways that these young adult or college ministers can start maybe building that up in the people that are in their group?
That a church planter doesn't necessarily have to be a straight seminary trained 3 years pastor. It can be an accountant. It can be a musician. It can be a finance student, chemistry student. We need to go back to the day where we have, for lack of a better term, we call them the lay people planting new churches. Mm-hmm. And I think, first of all, is get beyond the barrier of being involved in ministry means going for 3 years seminary or this theological training. You can do a lot of that now, local field, but also I can be an accountant and be a minister. I can be a musician and be a minister. I can be a chemistry professor and be a minister. And start out simple. Wait a minute, how do I plant a church? Well, start building connections with people, relationships with people, sharing the gospel with them, disciple them, and that's how you congregate people.
Yeah.
So I think leaders can start there. I also think leaders need to give their people permission. Pastors need to give their people permission that, yes, you can go out and be a part of this, that we almost need to get rid of the ecclesiastical hierarchy and say, let's go out and plant.
Yeah, that's so good. So what's some last kind of encouragement or words that you would give to people listening when it comes to church planting or reaching Tennessee, or like you mentioned, different ethnicities that are moving into Tennessee? What's some final encouragement you would give?
Look at Tennessee as a mission field. Be willing to step out and say, "Hey, I'm going to go spend 2 years with a church planter and help them out. I'm going to do a 2-year missionary journey, and it's right down the block from me." If you're seeing people who are not being reached, just start building those relationships with them. You don't necessarily have to be formal, be informal, and just start reaching people. I always tell people church planting is a very simple concept. And people say, well, no, it's complicated. I said, no, it's very simple. You lead people to Christ, you disciple them, you congregate them, and the next thing you know, you got a church.
Yeah.
And you got a church plant. You don't have to have a building yet. You don't have to have the staff and everything. It's that simple discipleship process.
Wow.
And I think if we start from there, and my last thing I would say to anybody who's listening to this is you can plant. You can be, you might not be a lead planter. You can be part of a team. You can be part of supporting people. And I wish we make it where every guy who graduates from seminary has to spend 2 years at a church plant. You'll learn a lot of ministry lessons that maybe you wouldn't learn on church staff.
Yeah.
That's so good. If somebody would like to get in contact with you, they had maybe questions about church planting, or how could they do that?
My information is on the website for TVMB. And then you can also email me at lmcullen@tnbaptist.org, or just call the switchboard here. They'll pass you through. And if anyone says, hey, I'm thinking about planting, I'm interested, we have a little thing online that we can send you that's an initial assessment. And it'll just tell you what some of your gifts and strengths are. And I recommend anybody using that just for thinking about ministry, looking at some things. But yeah, we'd love to talk to you, how to plug you in.
That's awesome. Well, Lewis, thank you for taking some time to be with us today. And Lorenzo, you got any final comments before we sign off?
No, thanks for coming. And, as a person that's kind of seen both sides, I've seen a church plant, I've seen it grow. Like, just super grateful for what you do.
Thank you.
It's needed more than people really probably truly understand. Yeah.
Well, thanks so much for listening today. If this is your first episode joining us, make sure to go back and listen to our other episodes. We have 2 other seasons that are on our podcast. Make sure to like, subscribe, share. Thank you for the gifts through the cooperative program and Golden Offering for Tennessee Missions, because without those, podcasts like this, jobs like mine and Lewis's, Lorenzo's, it couldn't happen. So thank you for that. Special shout out to Colby Mike for recording and producing this episode. And until we see you next week or next time, go and win Tennessee for Jesus. We'll see you later.
Peace.